I don't think. Yeah, I don't. Sorry, that was a double negative.
We just leave you alone wherever you do, like give your own privacy and do whatever you do.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily is the best thing either. Like that then you're like, because I know people who like barely talk to their parents and they're just sort of like distant, and you don't really want that either. You don't want just your parents have like no idea what's going on in the kid's life, and yeah, but that. So I think one way, but you can still be a positive influence on someone without trying to push them or control their lives as what we've been putting. Like for example,
we want to shoot them, we love them.
For example, so I like what I do with my parents. Like
you want them to lead us. You don't want the kids to lead us.
What I do with my parents, we read for example, we read the same books, we watch the same movies, and we talk about like what we what sort of like we give our opinions on like different movies or something. I know it sounds like trivial, but yeah, it can become a meaningful discussion. We talk about like
yeah, maybe.
We talk about like
sometimes we don't know your like the school life. Because we didn't grow up here, so sometimes we don't know what's going on in the school. Maybe say, sometimes you don't know what we're talking about.
Right. It doesn't have to be about school life. Then like it can be anything that both of you like experience. Maybe there's like something happened around here. Something was in the news. You can talk about that. You can talk about like experiences that you share. And then once you have this, once they see you as someone who can have interesting conversations with you, then they will want to talk to you about things.
I mean, I can almost guarantee that all of you are probably very interesting people, or at least have very interesting stories. But then you have to ask yourself, how much of that does my child know? I mean, there are things I learned about my parents just last year that I should have known 10 years ago. You know, like I could go into it forever, but a lot of the health of a relationship just comes from how much you know the other person, and how much the other person is willing to accept without judgment. You know, it's one thing to tell a story, but if the other person goes, "That's not interesting," or "Why did you do that?" then you don't want to tell the story anymore, right? But if you can encourage, you know, a kind of relationship where you can share and there's no judgment, maybe the other person even made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
You know, let's say, I'm trying to come up with an example on the spot of me doing something wrong. But so let's say, so one thing that happened, I can give a really good example, is you know, I was dating someone in high school who was like a Disney princess, perfect person, I mean, kind, wonderful, smart. And that's that thing. I was her first love, she wasn't mine.
Oh my God.
And so everyone.
It's your story.
We've been trying to figure out if he has
We've
a
been
real
trying to figure
girlfriend.
out Alex's dating history. No,
He'll have he has a shirt.
This is also another topic of interesting.
Okay, so you know, so fortunately, I was fortunate in the sense that my parents, you know, could understand that I wanted to date someone, and they were open about that. I think some parents go, that's
At
a waste
which
of
age?
time. I was 16.
16. Okay,
Yeah.
it's only junior.
Yeah. And so, you know, I dated this person, and they're wonderful, and there's a lot of social pressure to you know, love this person. And I wasn't ready for that, and I don't think they're the right person for me. But everyone thought we, you know, this like.
Best match.
Yeah, like they thought like we were voted like most likely to get married. Right? And so I get to college, and on Valentine's Day, my freshman year, she comes to visit. And she she buys her own plane ticket, you know, she saves up. And on Valentine's Day I break up with her. Yeah, I know, it's a shitty, I made a mistake. But at the time, right, I told my mother, because she loved Christina. She was in love with who she was, and everyone was, right? She's so easy to like. But my mother's first response was, "How could you? You're a terrible person. I didn't raise my son to do this. I need to think about this. You know, I don't think you're my son." And hangs up. And so there's two ways of looking at it, right? One is, okay, I made a mistake. right? And if I did something like that, it must be terrible, right? And I need to know that I'm terrible. That's one way to see it. The other way to see it is, I knew this person for so long, something really serious must have happened in order for me to feel like it was necessary to break up with her on Valentine's Day, right? And there was a chance for my mother to know that, so to ask, what happened? You know, something really serious must have happened. But instead, you know, she decided not to, right? She decided, no, this is how I'm going to go. I'm going to tell you you're a terrible son. But, you know, it's that kind of a situation, you know, where certainly, you know, in retrospect, right, if we'd had that conversation, if I told her that and she goes, you know, I'm not judging. I know that you're not a terrible person, right? If you're a terrible person, that reflects bad on me because I'm your mother. But you're not a terrible person. You know, something must have really happened, and I want to know what that is. I want to work through this with you. You know, like that was the response I think that would have been best for both of us, right? But it required that our relationship, you know, already had these habits in place, you know, of hearing something and going, you know, maybe I don't agree with that personally. Maybe you did do something wrong, but I'm not going to judge you for that, right? Because that doesn't help us grow. That doesn't help us become better people. Right, that might make us feel bad, but feeling bad doesn't always make you a better person. Maybe very rarely it does. So that kind of a skill, right? Hearing without judgment, hearing even if the other person did something wrong, and knowing that actually you still love this person. They're very important to you. You want to help them, you know, be better. That's a skill. That's a habit. And without that habit.
We want to learn that habit too, without judging you. I try to avoid judgment. My daughter also, oh, you try judging me, so I don't want to tell you more.
Sometimes it's
I
hard.
said, I don't mean that.
Yeah.
I don't want to judge you, you know.
It's
Right.
a teenage.
Sometimes I just say, I really want you to learn some lesson. If you made a mistake, want you to learn lesson. Just want to point out, so next time don't
Right.
make
And
some
so-
mistake.
and sometimes,
but
you
I
know,
still think it's a
sometimes
judge.
don't even point out the lesson. Because
Oh.
often we know the lesson. I mean, when I broke up, I knew.
So you see, you can yourself can learn.
Right. You know, like what I needed wasn't to know my lesson.
Of course they can. Of course we understand.
Right. I mean, you'd be surprised. You know, I think a lot of us.
It's just my kids.
Yeah, you know, like it's true. We're kids, but I think something's interesting. Sometimes I go back and read through conversations I had when I was like 16, 17, and I'm embarrassed before I open up the conversation. I think I was an idiot. I'm gonna be embarrassed. And then I look back and I was like, actually, I was really mature about how to talk. Like I made the right choice. You know, so like I made better choices sometimes as a 17-year-old than I do now. You know, and so you'd be surprised. I think sometimes it takes that faith. You know, that kind of hope and say, maybe you did something wrong, you know, and if you did something wrong, fine, I'm not going to judge you, but maybe you did something right, you know, in which case, you know, I would deserve recognition, you know, some kind of validation, say you're on the right track. So, you know, with that said, I think, you know, I mentioned we were kind of at a turning point. Do we want to do some, like, NDC type stuff?
What's
I have a question.
Oh, my-
Earlier,
Sure.
you mentioned about that. It's two keywords I really like to come from, you know, your age, especially the high schooler. One is the symptoms, you know, both of you mentioned about probably three of you about the games. And second is looking for approval. I think that's what the teen is looking for. So they don't look, they must have some kind of things in the back of their mind, they want approval, so a lot of them are addicted to games because, you know, they don't have other activities. They call it, maybe math competition is probably the biggest thing in their life for a lot of Chinese male students and now a lot of girl students. How do you get yourself involved practically? You know, advice, how do you get involved in cycling?
Oh, in cycling.
Yes.
So-
that actually was a kind of turning point for you.
So I think, you know, often when I bring up this part of, you know, my upbringing, a lot of people think, a lot of the parents and a lot of us think, I should get my teen a bike. You know,
And we have bike at home. But
right? You know, so I'm saying that's
how do you, yeah,
right.
how do
I'm
you
saying
get
it's not
involved in biking?
it's not necessarily a catch-all solution. So for me, you know, it wasn't special that it's not, I don't think, unique that I found this thing. You know, what was unique was that I found this thing, and my parents said, "Go ahead."
Is through school? Or
No.
through people
So
from
here's the thing
outside?
too. I think a lot of us, you know, as teens too, we think of things like we think that we can only do things that they're sanctioned. You know, so when we talked if they're sanctioned, if they're official. Right? So earlier we talked about making friends. The first thing we thought of was what kind of clubs can we join, right? What if we can make friends without clubs? Like that would be kind of an interesting, right? But the thing I'm trying to say is that you know, with cycling it was organic. You know, I just started riding my bike, and I came back home. My parents all they said was, "How was it?" And I said, "Pretty fun." And every day I'd go a little bit longer and longer, and that was it. So I think.
By yourself or
By myself.
with a group?
By myself, yeah. Eventually, I joined up with a group, but most of my training was on my own. So I think most kids, you know, have these moments of finding something and going, huh, I think I like that. But for whatever reason, you know, maybe they don't trust don't trust their parents enough to tell them, or maybe they do tell them, but the parent says something like, "That's not going to help you get into college. It's not useful, right?"
That's
And eventually, and then that gets squashed. I was lucky because my parents didn't do that, and then that became this thing. And by age 17, I was national champion.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
so
When did you start it?
14.
14. Oh, so junior. So you didn't start in high
So
school?
well, I was 14 in high school. So it was,
Oh,
Genetic gene, probably.
oh, yes.
so I mean, it could be, but
Not easy for people to get.
my advice is if your team wants to start a sport, pick a small sport. There was like no one to compete with, so it wasn't genetics. It's,
The other question I would like to ask, usually boy are, mature later than girl, right?
I think, well, not
In
necessarily
which
true.
age, which grade, you were thinking like, I want to be better, I want to get a good grade, or I want to be, have better future when I go out. Do you start thinking this, in what age you're thinking about this?
You know, I think the
4
question.
years old. Yeah. Okay. But no, like my point is, it's different for everyone, and like it's.
Does anyone think about, I want to be, in general, I want to be be a better in the future, have a good job,
So I think the
a
question
better
is.
life? Do you thinking about this?
I think that's the thing is we ask different questions of ourselves, right? As students we might think of one question, and as parents you might think of another question. In reality they're the same, but they're phrased differently, right? So you're thinking, how can I have a better future, right? As teens you might be thinking, how can I, like we might have a bad day one day, we might have a bad conversation, we might think, how could that be better? We might be thinking more short term, we might be thinking more generally, instead of thinking, how can I get into a better college? They might be thinking, how can I be a better person, right? So, in reality, those two questions might be very similar, but the way to answer them is very different.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Are you done?
No, go ahead. Am I ever done, Michelle?
Okay, later I'll see what to have something. It's just I feel like, just from the way the question was phrased, how can I become a better person? How can I have a better future? How can I have a better career and job? That was, if I wasn't mistaken, I think it was phrased somewhat in that idea. But the questions that I ask myself is, how can I become more informed? How can I have healthier life? Like, how many hours should I hike today to have a healthier lifestyle? What are my friends now, and how are we happy? How can I have a better relationship with someone in the future? In college, what do I want out of my life? Those are the questions that I'm asking. In China, Chinese people have this thing about 上进心, and you think that all that matters. Do you guys know what that means?
No.
No? 上进,
for us.
I mean, every one of them can, I guess, explain 上进心, but I feel like Chinese, like self-improvement. But kind of like in China, I feel like there's a narrow view of that. 上进心is almost, you only talk about it when you talk about school.
Yeah, go to the school.
But isn't wanting a better relationship, wanting a better health, wanting a better relationship with your
That's
parent,
more important, that's more
isn't that also wanting to improve? Isn't that also self-improvement?
So I think you're right. It reflects a difference in values about what to improve. But in reality, both things are important, right? It just has to be that both people, both parties have to recognize that it's not unimportant that we want to be more informed. It's also not unimportant to think about the future, right? But I think often what happens is we might be tired of hearing about. Go ahead.
The reason I'm asking, because I have one son who's 21 years old, when he was in high school, he failed his class, F or D, so, C, that's why he didn't get to the university. So, I encourage him to join the Air Force. He did join Air Force, and then he fell again. 1 year later, he came back. Right now, he's still in college, taking class and drop, taking class and drop. He never think about his future. And when I asked him, do you think about your future? What are you going to be? He really cares his health. He always eat the white honey and whatever that we purchase. And he really cares his here, because he's starting losing, or he said something like this. And I told him, you're here, it maybe it's important, but what about your future? What about your job? If you don't have job, you cannot survive. You cannot, make a living. What's the important for your care, for the here? So which is important if you're like homeless, outside? Do you still care your health? You don't have job, Most important for parents is you need to get a good education in order to find a job, right? To make a safe, living for yourself, and then you think about healthy other
Right.
things.
So I think often it's the case that this person probably already knows that. Rationally speaking, right? Cognitively speaking, yeah, we know that, right? But the question is, if you know that already, then why do you do the other thing? It doesn't mean they don't care. It means they care a lot, but something is keeping them from making actions, making choices to reflect that. I think that's the interesting question, right? So, I don't know your son, but I know people who've had similar experiences as that, and I know serious cases too, where the answer to, why can't you, the answer to, why don't you behave in a way that reflects what you care about, the answer was often childhood abuse, or childhood abuse or an undiagnosed mental health problem. Maybe extreme anxiety was one reason, right? There are all these things that never came up. They were things that could never be verbalized because of the way that their relationships with their parents were structured. So I don't think I can give you a prescription for what to do, but I think I can at least tell you that maybe the next time you talk about this with your son, think less about the question of why do you not care about this, why do you care about that. Think more of, I know that you care about your future, right? I think everyone does, right? There are very few people who just don't care, right? Everyone does in some way. The question is, why aren't your actions reflecting that? And when they tell you their answer, I think it can be very easy to judge, right? And say, no, you're just lazy, no, you're whatever. But refrain from judging and think for yourself, okay, how can I support this then? Does that make sense?
Ask my son, how can I support this?
Yeah, so I'm not saying support, the hair or whatever. I'm saying, they're gonna tell you something about what they need, right? They're gonna tell you something. If you ask them, hey, I know that you care about your future, what is making it hard for you to pursue that? They're gonna give you an answer, right? And you might not like that answer, but I'm asking you to take that answer with love and not judgment, right? And that might be really hard. That's going to take, a second for you to process, right? But that's,
Yeah, please.
I'm going to say, that's the beginning of the process, right? Is the moment you hear that and you don't feel angry or you don't feel resentful or you don't feel like you're going to call them lazy or something, then the conversation can keep going about how you can help, right? Or maybe not how you can help, but what they need to do for themselves. It could be that they've never spoken to anyone really about what they need to do, right? They just know they need to do it, but they don't know how, right? Even knowing how to secure a future for yourself is a skill too. Simply knowing that you need to do it is different from knowing how. And often, our relationships with our parents make it hard for us to discuss in a healthy way the question of how. Maybe my how is different from what my mother wants, right, or my father wants. I mean, if I say I want to secure a future for myself by becoming a male stripper, right, that's going to be an extreme kind of an example, but that pays very well. I could do that right now and make more money than probably any of you in the audience. I mean, it's a very, but okay. So for any of you, right? So, but the thing is, if that were my only option, right, or if that were one of my, if that were one of few options, right, and I, and I felt like I couldn't do that, or I felt like if I felt like I couldn't do that, or felt like I couldn't share that I wanted to do that, then I'm going to be stuck here, and that's the worst case, right? Chances are your son doesn't want to be a male stripper. Probably much better than that, right? Or much less scary to you than that. But the conversation needs to begin somewhere, right? The conversation needs to begin with the question of, how are we going to do that, right? And when I hear how, am I going to respond to that negatively, or not?
May I ask what age are you?
How old are you?
What age? So you
How old
already
you-
graduated
how old
from
you
college, right?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah, 2013, you already said.
I'm 24.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2013 you were
Knew
thinking
it.
about, 24, 22,
Wow,
graduate.
that's so smart.
So I have a question, maybe different. Talk about the dating in this high school. I want to know because girls usually more mature than the boys. I want to know.
That assumption is not always true.
Oh no, okay, I'm sorry.
Speaking as a girl, I've heard
Julia,
that so much.
look,
It's not.
Julia, okay, Julia high probably is more because I can tell. No, it's not. Okay, I don't want Jack. Okay, but anyway, just I want to know when the girls like the how do I say? Is the girls will be asked? Or, I mean.
You're answering
Dating with a boy or the or the boy will be it's a both side or it's a one side. I mean usually if the boys are like the girl they will initiate this conversation or it's the girls. I mean,
No, just be patient.
Who is more initiative?
yeah, who is
Boys
more
or
initiative?
girls?
Yeah, when in the school and what do you talk about dating?
Don't care doesn't matter.
Socially, I
Because
think
Because you're taking, because you're
I
out
mean,
the market.
tell me the real the probability. I mean,
it's
I don't have samples
Wait,
on
wait, wait.
this one.
no.
I
I mean,
think
yeah,
it's-
just in your school, in your own school, you're talking.
it's like so.
How many? How
no, okay.
percentage of people
Wait,
dating?
so
Now percentage how the boys are
a good
first
way to
initiative.
measure like
Very specific
of
question.
who initiates is it tends to be like there's always like the proms and the fancy dances like so there's always
for
a
senior.
big asking right like you all like all the people like they all get together make posters flowers and like really big event it's like all over social media like you all see it right and it tends to be the guy that asks the girl
It's just
Okay.
a tradition though.
yeah but that's just tradition
I
like
want to the reality.
maybe like sometimes the girl and the guy already know that they like each other like it's like but it tends to be that the guy like even if it's just tradition it's the guy that like does the asking yeah
Yeah, that's usually the case. I mean, it was different for me because it's real. But most of the time, kidding, Jesus. Most of the time, it was it's usually, and that's the case outside of high school. So I think the way that Western society structures gender roles, let's just think about gender, is in such a way that that it's always men initiating and women receiving in some way. I'm not saying that's the right way, but that's kind of the way it is.
What's the percentage of your friends around you influence you? Say that girl is good, you should dating her. What's the percentage? How about your influence from a friend? Tell me the percentage. Do you influence by your friends or you just do it yourself? I mean, when you want dating a girl,
Like
I want-
dating?
They are not the ones dating.
Huh?
Your friends are not the ones dating for you.
I know,
So-
but,
so-
but who
but
at the
here's the
beginning?
difference.
Who make the first? I mean, when you make this action, I mean, I just want to know.
So
Out of
I think
curiosity, why would you care so much about the percentage?
Because how does that?
Because you have a girl.
It's appropriate. Because I'm a girl, I want to see it's appropriate.
Boys doesn't.
I see.
But the thing is,
So
Appropriate.
so I would say
dating.
this.
At which age?
As someone who you know, I've seen it play out in college here too. I would recommend letting your kids date. I think it's an experience, and it requires experience. It requires a lot of knowledge about how to do things well. Something that's really common in American dating is Asian women are fetishized by the rest of society.
Could you define? I don't know what the
Oh, so fetishize means that people who aren't Chinese or aren't Asian think that they're like extra desirable, like special, right? And it's not great, right? Because you're reduced to, you know, like I'm trying to.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're basically just reduced to your physical attractiveness, right? Basically, like Asian women often, around my age, often feel, it's a common experience that they feel unsafe dating, because the only reason men want to date them is because we've turned them into trophies. You know, so it becomes kind of a dangerous thing, and it requires experience to know how to deal with that. On the other side, Asian men are often seen as the least desirable in society. So if you look, so there's a dating website called OkCupid. It was now it's a dating site. It originally started as a data science project, as a big data project, where this guy decided to launch a dating website to collect data from hundreds of thousands of users. And using this data, he could actually see large-scale, extremely significant trends in terms of race and gender. So,
What's the website?
OkCupid, they release
OkCupid.
yeah, they release data analyses every quarter,
Okay.
and the race and gender analyses are the most interesting because Asian women are about as desirable as white women, very desirable, highest in society. Asian men are seen to be about as desirable as black women.
Really?
Yeah. So
Self-doubt. I feel so.
So
bad for
the only people who respond to Asian men on dating sites
Uh-huh.
are Asian women. The people who respond to Asian women on dating sites, everybody wants to date an Asian woman, right? So the pressure then, you know, of being an Asian woman, you know, especially being an attractive young Asian woman, is extremely high. Everyone wants your attention, right? And that can be, I mean, on the surface level, that can be distracting from studies, right? On the deeper level, it can be really, really harmful to your self-perspective, you know, to your self-identity, about how you see yourself. You know, if the only attention people give you is sexual or romantic attention, it makes you very frustrated, right? Maybe you're a very smart person, you want attention for that. Maybe you're a very kind person, you want attention, but instead people only see you a certain way, right? And dating gives you, you know, especially young, dating gives you the experience to be able to learn to handle that. You know, I think, you know, for people of your age, maybe less applicable, maybe you're not seeing this as much, but I can guarantee you that in college, you know, you ask any young Asian woman, Asian American woman, you know, how they feel about dating, they'll say something similar. You know, they feel a little bit, you know, at least a little bit
But
odd,
maybe we
you
should
know.
worry more for the Asian male than the
So there's that too.
Thank you for your consideration.
So there's that too, you know, and I think so there's that problem too, and I've spoken about this in previous lectures too. I think when Asian men feel non-desired, right, when they feel undesired, a lot of the ugly things about being a man surface in an extremely magnified way. So an example is if you look at the rates of sexual assault and, you know, who perpetrates them. Asian men in college, if you control for all other factors, believe that rape is justified or commit rapes at a higher rate than their white counterparts. A lot of this, you know, is theorized to come down to the fact that if you feel like no one wants you, you just have to take, you know, what you have. So again, you know, dating in this way too. So, you know, you have to worry about your sons too. You know, not just about your daughters, you know, whether or not they'll be victimized, but whether your sons will commit something, you know, that will make someone else victimized. So, dating in a way, you know, at a young age and being open to this, because, you know, presumably most of you have been married, you have dating experience, romantic experience. It's useful to be able to apply that, you know, and channel that towards routine in a healthy way. Useful, like, you know, at a young age. Compared to if you just told them, no, you can't do anything, and then once they're in college, they do whatever, right? So it's teaching them what healthy relationships look like. You know, in some ways you have to do this by setting an example, you know, maybe with your spouse or whomever. But also in terms of how you speak and think about these things. You know, the more kind of clamped down you'll be, the more risk you'll be exposed to. And this, you know, is shown in study after study. The more risk they'll be exposed to by the time they get to college. So, you know, of course, I understand, you know, if you feel protective, right? You know, sometimes it's an academic thing, you know, if they date, they'll be distracted or whatever, maybe they'll be hurt or